Welcome to the Unaffiliated Creatives Podcast, a show where independent artists can learn from other independent artists. My name is kaeveryday, and each week I will be speaking with some of the most creative minds in the indie music space, trying to figure out what they have learned while navigating through the music industry without the support of major record labels. This podcast is brought to you by the good people over at King Neppy Studios and powered by Red Weasel Media. Thanks for tuning in to the Unaffiliated Creators Podcast. I'm your host, kaeveryday. This is the indie artist safe place, so take off your shoes, get comfortable, and stay a while. Do us a favor and please rate the show. And if you have any feedback for us, please email us at unaffiliatedcreatives@gmail.com. The snippet you heard playing was a song titled The Masquerade by indie artist REG. Now that everybody has taken off their shoes and got comfortable, Reg, what you been up to?
What's up? What's up? How's everyone doing today, man? Honestly, man, just living day by day at the moment, you know what I'm saying? Just, working on some music, trying to get my mind right. So, yeah, that's how about yourself?
All right. So let me ask you this question. So what was the first thing you did when you woke up this morning?
Honestly, the first thing I did when I woke up this morning, literally, was just get ready for this interview because I didn't really have that much good sleep last night. I was pretty much up almost all night working on a few things.
All right. So this podcast was the first thing you did when you got up this morning. Hey, man, sounds like you living like a rock star. But hey, I get it, man. Hey, I'm glad you came on, man. So if this is the first thing you did when you got up, man, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. So let me ask you this. How long have you been pursuing a music career?
Honestly, I've been pursuing a music career since about the early 2010s, maybe like 2013, 2014.
All right. So since about 2014, that's when you really decided to take it serious and you really start trying to pursue it as a career or a profession. Pretty
much probably as a career. I started buying my own microphone, my own equipment, and everything like that. And I pretty much had to taught myself how to set up the sound system, set up the production, and everything too. So pretty much about a year.
So when you say you had to teach yourself how to set everything up, I'm assuming that you do everything yourself?
Yeah, for the most part, I do everything myself.
Okay. Well, I definitely can. I respect that, man, because I'm the same way. I do when I record music. I do everything myself. I record my own music. I mix and master it. I do my own beats, write my own songs and everything. So I know it could be a lot of hard work, but at the end of the day, man, it's very fulfilling. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. Let me ask you this question. Who would you say has influenced you musically?
I have a lot of influence musically, honestly, but if I was just to pick somebody, one of my biggest influence, it might probably be Michael Jackson.
So out of all the artists you named, Michael Jackson was your biggest influence. So now I got to dig a little deeper now because I wasn't expecting for you to say Michael Jackson. So are you a rapper or are you a singer? Because some of the music that I heard of yours, you was rapping. So are you a rapper or are you a singer or do you do both?
Well, mostly I'll be doing rapping, but sometimes if I have a chorus, I might sing a little bit on a chorus, but not really all the time. It's just mostly hip hop oriented.
Okay. So look, man, I wasn't even prepared to ask you these questions, but now that you done said Michael Jackson was your influence, I got to dig a little deeper now. So this is very intriguing to me because most of the time, let's be honest. Most of the time, like I said, if you're a rapper, most of the time it would be a rapper that influenced you musically, but you're a rapper, but you're saying that basically the king of pop, most people would say Michael Jackson was the king of pop. He's a person that influenced you musically and he was a singer. So I just think that's very, very intriguing, but that's cool though. I would say because he's passed away. So he was one of the best artists that I've ever seen, his music and everything. So, but I'm a singer though. So, people will probably, get me saying that Michael Jackson influenced me because I sing, but since you rap, I just was just thinking you was gonna say a rapper, but that's cool.
Well, I do have rappers that influence me. I just thought when you said musically, I thought you just meant like out of everybody who musically influenced you the most. But in terms of rapping, like Rakim, KRS-One, Nas, Tupac, Pharoah, some of my biggest influences.
Okay, now we getting somewhere. I asked you that question. I wasn't really trying to set you up, but I asked you that question for a specific reason because now this is going to kind of get into the next thing I want to talk about. So when I listen to your music, and don't take this the wrong way when I say this, to me, it sounded like it was very heavily influenced on how rap used to sound back in like the mid 80s to 90s when like the Rakims, the KRS-Ones, where rap was really based on lyrics, what you were saying in the song, punchlines. The music had to have lyrical content, things like that. You actually had a message. And that's what your music sounded like to me. So that's why I was just wondering, like, who influenced you musically? Because it did remind me of like the KRS-Ones and stuff like that.
Yeah, KRS-One's pretty much one of my biggest influences ever when it comes to him MCing, just the way that he pretty much put hip hop on his sleeve when it comes to his message, his voice, his charisma, and everything like that. But Rakim's actually my favorite MC of all time too, if that makes sense to you, you know what I'm saying? So it's just a lot of influence when it came to both of those guys, and the fact that the music is still revered to today says something to the masses, in my opinion.
So let me ask you this question. So the fact that Rakim is your favorite rapper and you really are influenced by him and KRS-One and other rappers that rap like that in that style, would you consider yourself an old soul? Like, do you prefer listening to like, I guess what people would consider like the old school hip hop, when people was break dancing and they were really big with the graffiti and, all that kind of stuff. So with all that being said, would you consider yourself an old soul?
Honestly, I wouldn't really consider myself an old soul because I still listen to like a lot of music that's popping today. It's like with me, it's a very unique mixture because sometimes I'll be in my car and let's just say 1 minute I'll feel like listening to, Wu-Tang, or the next minute I want to listen to some Griselda. And then let's just say 5 minutes later I want to listen to some R&B. So I'll just be thumbing to some latest R&B like, Ari Lennox. I like some of Summer Walker's stuff and stuff too. So I'm very versatile when it comes to like what I like musically and everything like that. I'm just very random when it comes to those aspects.
So again, this wasn't a question that I had prepared for you, but I like the way that this podcast and where this conversation is going. So I got to ask you this question. So you listen to other types of music and you listen to some of the newer stuff that's out. Now, I haven't heard all of your music, but the stuff that I heard, again, sounded more like it was influenced more on like the 80s and 90s kind of hip hop and that kind of rap. Do you record music that sounds more like what's going on currently in the space, or is most of your music still more like listening to like a KRS-One album?
That's a very good question. Well, usually I like to put my own style and my own sound and charisma. And sometimes when I do my music, sometimes I might like wear my influence on my sleeve. So if one person might listen to this and they say, oh, he's definitely influenced by such and such, such and such, I'm not really going to really like be bothered by that stuff because, everybody has an influence. Everybody has someone that they look into and they revere to. So there might be some times where it's just like, I do something and it might be somewhat influenced by like a lot of people from back in the day, but I always try to make sure I add little aspects to make it more authentic in my regard, if that makes sense.
Okay. So from some of the stuff that I saw on you, you're from North Carolina, right?
That's right.
Okay. So I had to ask you this question before you get out of here. So would you consider yourself a Blue Devils fan or are you a Tar Heels fan?
Quite honest, if I had to pick a team, I might probably go with maybe Duke, but at the same time, I'm not really big on those teams, both personally, but if I had to pick one, probably Duke.
Okay. Well, the only reason why I asked because when it come to Carolina, it's like a big divide. Like it's almost like either you Duke Blue Devil or you Tar Heels, and they can't even be in the same room. It's like they hate each other almost. So I know it's a big rivalry. So I just figured since you're from Carolina, I just figured I would ask you that question. But sticking with the Carolina thing, how do you feel about J. Cole and the Baby since they're also from Carolina?
Well, I'm a huge fan of J. Cole. I pretty much have all of his albums in my collection. I might get some flack for this. I'm not a big fan of Lil Baby, though. Well, you said Lil Baby or Da Baby?
I said the Baby. The Baby is from Carolina as well.
Oh, well, nah, I'm not a fan of Da Baby either.
Okay. Yeah, Lil Baby from Atlanta. Da Baby is from Carolina.
Right.
But basically, you saying you ain't a big fan of either one of them, so it don't matter if it's Da or Little. You ain't a big fan of either one of the babies.
Right. No.
Gotcha. But you a big J. Cole fan.
Huge J. Cole fan.
All right. So how do you feel about the current state of hip hop? And what I mean by this question is like, how do you feel with how it seems like a lot of people's music kind of sound the same? There's this big movement as far as like the auto-tune. And how do you feel about rappers doing like the rapping, singing type stuff, like a lot of like the Drake type stuff where they singing and stuff? How do you feel about that?
Well, when it comes to the current state of hip hop, there's certain avenues where you have to really dissect because like the current state of hip hop is pretty much divided into plenty of aspects. Like when you talk about the whole auto-tune Drake singy stuff, I feel like, with that sound being like the most popular sound for like the past maybe 12 to 15 years, I feel like many artists try to gravitate to that because they feel like anybody can do stuff like that. And it's been so much drained down within the culture of the fact that people want to like rap and sing with auto-tune because they're afraid to jump out and branch out into their own sound. But at the same time, when it comes to like the general aspect of hip hop, hip hop these days are very, very diverse, but some people would still want to make the authentic sound. Like you have the Tyler, the creators who, when he first came out, he was pretty much very, out there. But then like in the last couple of years, he started adding more aspects like jazz and R&B. And then of course you have the Griselda crew who, huge fan of Griselda, like Westside, Conway. They pretty much bring that New York boom bap thing because a lot of the New York rappers was trying to rap like they were from the South too. And I kind of feel like I love how they add like that dark boom bap without actually sounding like something like you would hear from like Wu-Tang and whatnot, or even LOX.
Hey man, you naming some people that be spitting. So now I'm gonna ask you a question because now you sound like you really in tune with the Griseldas and the Wu-Tangs of the world. So out of the Griselda crew, which one do you think is the hottest rapper? You got Westside, you got Benny, you got Conway. Which one you think the best?
Honestly, if I have to keep it real, Conway is actually my favorite lyrically. I feel like Conway definitely stepped his game up over the year. I feel like he's the most consistent member. His recent album, he was definitely touching on topics like mental health and, just going outside of his main focus. But honestly, I love Westside Gunn's album. I feel like Westside Gunn always be getting me hyped, especially when I'm in my car and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So, and even, I even have to give a mention to the female rapper, Armani Caesar, who I feel like does not get the just due that she gets. Her recent album, probably one of the best hip hop albums that came out last year, in my opinion.
It's crazy how different people can have different opinions. And this is just how I feel, maybe just for different reasons. I actually think Benny is the hottest one. Like I said, I don't know. Everybody's different. Maybe it's just I just gravitate more to his style. But Benny, man, he crazy.
Benny is dope too. Like they're all very dope.
Okay. So I'm guessing you must have loved that song that him and J. Cole did.
Yeah, that song was very good. That was from his recent albums. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so I wanted to ask you this question. I wanted you to kind of walk us through this. So, can you talk to us about your process of creating a song from start to finish, especially since you do all of this stuff yourself? I just wanted you to kind of share with us, like, what's your process? If it ain't a big top secret or anything, just kind of walk us through your whole process of when you first have an idea for a song and just walk us through that process.
Okay, I can do my best on that. So whenever I'm thinking about music or if I'm writing a song, sometimes when it comes to like songwriting, it can either just come up straight to me just like that, or sometimes I might have to start with bits and pieces of everything. So when it comes to those bits and pieces, I like to write down bullet points just so like, when you have an idea, but at the same time, you just don't want to forget the idea. You want to like write it down because just in case it comes back to you or just in case you want to manifest on that. So that's pretty much how I am. And I'll always like to write everything down on my phone pretty much because I used to write stuff on notebook paper, but I just feel like it's more easy to write stuff down on my phone. And then once I record everything, I make sure that, all this, each two verses have like the right amount of syllables or just close to the amount of syllables so everything can flow right together and everything. And so I record it and we'll see where it goes from there once if it's right with the beat that I made. If not, we just always go back to the drawing board and stuff. There's sometimes I'll review songs for like 4 months on end and stuff. So
I'm glad you said something, man, when what you were just explaining your process. So I've asked rappers in the past, do they prefer to write their rhymes down in a notebook or a phone? And I'm actually kind of surprised that you said that you do your stuff on the phone, because the fact that your style is more along the Rakims and the Keras ones, I just would have thought that you just would have, been one of the ones that always write your stuff in a notebook. But yeah, so me personally, I don't know what it is. I always had to write my stuff in a notebook. I guess I'm a little older, and that's just how I've always done it. It's just easier for me to read a notebook and hold a notebook because it's something bigger that I can hold in my hand versus trying to hold a little phone, and maybe my vision ain't as good as it used to be. So, I can't be looking at these little words on the screen. So I need the full size notebook to be able to see what I wrote. So.
Yeah, like it really just depends on the situation because sometimes if it's like something like if I'm like out and about and I have a piece of paper, I might just write some lyrics down and I just always might transfer it to my phone. So it really just depends.
All right. So let me ask you this question. So which do you enjoy more? Because you make music and you create music. Do you enjoy making beats more, or do you enjoy actually recording the song, and why? Like, which one do you enjoy more doing, making beats or recording the song, and why?
I actually prefer, excuse me, I actually prefer making the song, to be honest, like recording the song and everything, just because I like how some of my concepts will come on a beat. And I pretty much love how, just because like, originally I always started off as a poet, you know what I'm saying? So just the fact of us writing a song right now is always puts me on the edge,
All right. So let me ask you, so with the current climate of cancel culture, does that affect how you approach making music? And what I mean by that is, like, are you more conscious about what you write in your lyrics now that we're in this big cancel culture climate?
To be honest with you, absolutely not. I'm always someone that likes to speak my mind and whatever. And I'm always somebody that pretty much am a very dominant person. So, I never really cared too much about cancel culture because sometimes people like to cancel things just for clout, or they might not know that you revenue about why they're actually doing the artwork. They just look at one specific thing and they always want to say, oh, that's indecent, that's bad, we should cancel this. It's like they're so quick to cancel stuff, but at the same time, the stuff that they're actually promoting and everything like that themselves, like they say, oh, you might get canceled, but they're still rocking like Gucci, wearing the whole fashion designer with Gucci was racist among our people and stuff like that too, So I'm never really too worried about that stuff. I'm always want to speak my mind in whatever regards.
All right. So what would you say is your favorite era of hip hop and why? So I'm gonna break it down into these sections. You got the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, or now. Out of those sections, which one would you say was your favorite era of hip hop?
You know what? Can I pick like a span of years if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my favorite years from hip hop, really, and this might be a very broad duration, but I'm about to say from 1988 all the way up to 2001. I felt like a lot of groundbreaking albums from the genre came out around that time, and I felt like pretty much when it was still in its toddler form, it was still owned by us. Now, when it comes to the whole culture and stuff, you have people wanting to put their 2 cents in, and it doesn't really feel like after the finished product, it doesn't really feel like, it's for the culture. It feels like they're selling it to the culture.
So from 88 to the early 2000s is your time period.
Yep.
Okay. That's a good time period. I would have to agree. Me, maybe not so much into the 80s, but when it came to like the Wu-Tangs and, all of that, the whole Master P movement, Cash Money, Lil Wayne, then when Nas came, the early, Jay-Z, Biggie, Tupac, the Locks, Jada Kiss, all of that stuff. Yeah. That was my time right there.
Very good choices, by the way.
All right. So talk to us about how you came up with your song titled The Masquerade.
Honestly, when it comes to that song right there, that was one of those songs I just wrote stuff just to write stuff. To be honest, there was not really no major story with that. I just was just writing some punchlines down and everything like that. And pretty much, I just felt like, what, this might be a good song right here and everything, you know what I'm saying? So I made a little futuristic production. I felt like that was something very different from what I was used to, you know what I'm saying? So that's pretty much how it was, just pretty much just me writing and just the right stuff.
Well, let me ask you this. So the title is very interesting, and of course, anybody knows what that word means. That's like when you go to those parties and the people be wearing like the mask and you can't really tell who the person is, because they're wearing a mask. But is there anything in the song that specifically references like what a masquerade is, or you just decided to give it that name, but it's not necessarily associated with what a masquerade is?
Yeah, I pretty much just gave it that name just because it just had that feeling, if that makes sense, So I pretty much just get called it masquerade. So yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about it.
Well, it was a good name to give it because it definitely got my attention. I was like, masquerade, yeah. That actually would be a cool video too. If you did a video where it was like people walking around with like the mask on and stuff, that would be kind of crazy. So I also see that you're doing things outside of making music. So can you talk to us about your clothing brand?
Oh, well, honestly, that clothing brand, I pretty much discontinued that at the moment. But yeah, I did have a little clothing brand a little bit called, ironically, The Masquerade. And it's just pretty much, just shirts and sweatshirts, just promoting like, Black history, it had like the girl with the afro and stuff like that too on the cover, and then it'll have like a phrase in the back that says, like unity or just fighting the power and stuff like that too. But at the moment, I kind of put that on hold at the moment. I may get back into it just based on interest. So that's pretty much what the clothing brand is, the general consensus of it.
Okay. Well, I think you just answered my next question, but the next question I was going to ask you is, if you had to choose between being a music artist or being the owner of a clothing brand, which one would you pick and why? But right now, it sounds like you kind of done put the clothes on hold and you more focused on the music right now.
Right.
All right. So I just had to ask you this question because it just happened, but I'm pretty sure you, like most people, you probably weren't at all interested in it. But since the Grammys just happened, did you even watch the Grammys?
I watched the whole Grammys, actually.
Oh, so you actually watched it?
Oh yeah, like say what you want. Like when it comes to like music awards, like Grammys, BT awards, those are like the awards I always watch. No, sometimes if it's ludicrous, sometimes if it's bumping, I just watch it just to watch it.
All right. So since you actually watched the Grammys, how did you feel about it? And how did you feel about, of course, there was a couple of different situations where like a lot of people thought a certain artist should have won an award, but they didn't. I know you probably heard about Chris Brown was mad because the guy, I think his name's Glasper, won.
Yeah.
He won it, but he thought somebody else should have won. A lot of people felt that Beyonce should have won the album of the year, but she didn't. So how did you feel about the overall, certain artists didn't get, certain awards and just the overall, like the different like live performances and stuff? How did you feel about those?
Well, I'm gonna just break it down. This might be one of my favorite Grammy awards I saw in recent memory. Of course, I love the hip hop tribute. I loved certain performances like what's the dude's name? I love like certain performances that happened that night. Like, everyone just did their thing. But regarding about who should have won who, what, you're always going to hear this every year in the Grammys, and it's a damn shame because, speaking on the whole Chris Brown and Robert Glasper, when it comes to R&B music, there's like a little divide between what people might call R&B and what people might call soul music. And Robert Glasper, he's been doing a lot of heat for years and stuff like that. This is the same guy that worked with Lauryn Hill and Common and everything like that. So he has a huge following. But then, Chris Brown, he got that mainstream appeal about him. And, I have not heard either of the albums, so I'm not going to say which one was better, which one was not. But even like how low key that Robert Glasper is, like I'm not really surprised that Chris Brown said he doesn't really know him until he looks up a lot of his credits and stuff. Now, regarding the whole album of the year, with the whole Harry Styles and stuff, the Grammys always have this thing, they like to hype up like certain African American artists, like they've done this with like Mariah Carey's Daydream, they've done this with Michael Jackson's Bad Album and stuff like that too. When it comes to African Americans, when it comes to it being album of the year, because personally, I kind of wanted Kendrick's Mr. Morales to win album of the year. I felt like that album right there was on another level, but I knew like I had to think about it. It's like it's the Grammy, so they're always gonna pull a curveball. And when they pulled that saying Harry Styles won and stuff like that, I really was not surprised by that because the whole music crowd is trying to make him like the next king of pop because they want to do this thing when they want to erase like a lot of the African Americans' achievements just when somebody new was coming out. You know what I'm saying? So, and then everyone's saying that Beyonce's Renaissance should have won too. Again, that was a good album too. I'm more for Mr. Morales to win that, but I hated to say I knew for a fact that she was not going to actually get that award. I hate to say it because it's like because it's just like a very fickle situation about that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like they didn't want to like give us our just due because I just feel like they want to appeal to like the white audience, if that makes sense.
No, I know. I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I appreciate you breaking all that down for us. So before I let you get out of here, so the premise of this show is independent artists learning from other independent artists. So I got to ask you this question. What mistakes, if any, have you made in your music career so far that other people can learn from?
That's a very good question. One advice that I always get into, and this is just me personally, never bite the hand that feeds you, if that makes sense. Like, and what I mean by that, what I mean by that regard is the fact that if you had like day ones and whatnot, and they always tell you it like it is, never really disregard their advice, because of the fact that you don't want to be surrounded by yes man all your career, and the next thing you know, you just end up looking like a mess, So always have that one person that can actually tell it like it is, in my opinion. That's just the best advice I can give the independent artists today.
All right. Where do you see your music career in 5 years from now?
Honestly, 5 years from now, I see myself in the process of owning my own record label and pretty much, just producing and rapping and everything like that, while also still open up other avenues and everything. Because I do plan on also one day having a museum dedicated to underrated Black musicians as well too.
Wow, that would be amazing. Is there something that I should have asked you on this podcast that I didn't ask you for whatever reason?
Honestly, I can't really think of anything. I feel like you pretty much answered all the most important questions I was expecting. So I can't really think of nothing at the moment.
All right. Well, before you get out of here, man, take the time to tell the audience where they can find you online.
Absolutely. What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing? Y'all can follow me on Instagram at Reg Central. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at RealReg1. You can also look at my podcast on YouTube called Reg Review. So if y'all want to get in contact with me, hit me up a DM and we'll see where we can go from there.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking time to come on the podcast, man. And I'm going to be checking you out here in the near future, see what you got going on.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me as well.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Peace.